This meeting has been recorded and will be uploaded to the Middletown Council YouTube page. The aim is that decision making should be transparent and in the public domain, which will involve more of our community and local democracy. By being in this council chamber, you are consenting to be recorded and for your image to be added to YouTube. The images and sound may be used for training purposes. Any views expressed are the speaker's own and do not necessarily reflect the view of Middletown Council. Please view the guidance on recording in public meetings policy for more information. Okay. Right. First item on the agenda, 33 apologies.
I've got apologies from the Mayor, Councillor Harper, Councillor Garvey and Councillor Salt.
Councillor Jones.
Yes.
No.
Chair, I've had notification that Councillor Smith and Councillor Farrell are
Okay. Item 34, declarations of interest. A, disclosure peculiar interests and dispensations. Any other interests? If when we're going through, you find that you know somebody, then just shout up and we'll record it. Item 35, minutes to approve the minutes from the planning meeting held on the 18th of July. These have been before Town Council, so if you're happy to approve them, then I'll sign them. Is everybody happy to approve those minutes? Okay. Six, standing agenda item to consider any proposed sites for local listing. Any? Item 37, new planning applications. First one is planning application number SND 2023-0419. It's Mr. G. Waddy, in 3D Brownlee Road, Industrial Estate, Causeway. It's a variation of condition 5 relating to SND 2021-0713. No pre-application advice. This is the B8 storage, distribution and nano brewery with opening hours from Friday and Saturday from 12 till 1. Sunday, 5 o'clock, that's 1 in the morning. Sunday from 12 till 11. It states the changes started on the 4th of February 22. It wants to change the opening hours to include Monday to Thursday from 5 to 11, and the surrounding units are closed. There's been an objection based on parking, access and security issues, and it seems to be run as a pub given the opening hours and affecting the other business units. I've recommended basically that we refuse this, given that the concerns raised. Does it need such long opening hours to justify tasting? See what it says it's for. Can I say yes?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have to admit, and I noticed that I mentioned in the letter of objection, to be clearly honest, my comment still stands. As you mentioned, the letter of objection, I did question whether this would sort of morph into a pub over a period of time, and I think it's one of those things where, as a business develops, it does get to the stage where, you know, businesses look at business plans and review, and then look at suitable alternative premises to suit the business as it grows. And I think that's the situation here. So I certainly do, you know, maintain those concerns and share those concerns. I don't think it's a suitable place for a pub. It's an industrial estate. It's a suitable place for tasting to show prospective customers to gain clients, but you know, it's the business model itself doesn't lend itself to that kind of industrial area, as far as I'm concerned, and I am being consistent with comments which I previously made.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of wonder whether, as you say, and also if it is being run specifically, does it need to change its type of business, type of use, because at the moment it's down to PA, which is storage, distribution and nano group. If it's a pub, it's a different type of unit. That's one of the reasons I would recommend refusal.
Yeah, I think through the chair, I think it's something which we should recommend that the licensing committee at Staffordshire Moorlands have a close look at and make a decision on where the line lies, and let them, let them consider them there, because I actually agree with what you're saying.
I think 1 million. Yeah.
Is it a pub?
Sorry?
Is it a pub, or is it run as a pub, or is it just? Are you basically buying a pint?
Yeah, can I just say I did considerable tasting of considerable product. Yeah, yeah, I think it probably is being run as a pub. It opens for special occasions, people's birthdays and such. There's a big TV in there that shows sports. It invites food fans to come in so that patrons can, get food in types. So I would say it probably is being run jointly, because I do think they are brewing their own stuff as well. But as an add-on, they are selling some of their products, and I believe it may be some other breweries' products as well that they sell as well. I think probably the question is, it's been allowed to be run as a pub, and I don't think they contravened any planning issues at the moment with the hours that they're actually licensed to open. So I think the precedent has been sort of set that it is a legitimate business in this industrial estate. So then I suppose it's a legal question now whether it's allowed to extend its hours. So I think what Nigel suggests about going to the licensing committee, I mean, obviously it must have a planning thing. I mean, a lot of pubs do come to planning for changes of hours, but it's usually the licensing committee that makes that decision. So I think I'll go along with what's been said. But I think perhaps I wouldn't go as far to say to deny or turn it down, but let the licensing committee to look at it, because they will look at it in much greater detail.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think we need more information. We need a bit on hearsay, what we think, what might happen. It's a good business. It's good to pay off. Then we shouldn't just turn it down. We should try and get a bit more information, understand the license. So.
Yes, I agree with what Councillor Jackson said. I don't think it's particularly a planning decision here for us to refuse or otherwise, because I do accept, I think there's a good business and good businesses bring employment and bring revenue into the town, but I do think it's now an issue that if it's going to regulise hours over a consistent time, then it becomes a license thing, because it has changed its status slightly. Well, it's not for us to question the significance of it. It has changed its status from a microbrewery which provides tasting to an event to potentially a regularisation of hours. So to me, that's a license thing, and let them, make the judgment otherwise. If they come down in favour of it, then all means carrying on. If they don't come down in favour, they carry on as they go. But if the premises and the business has changed, everybody's business model changes, and everybody looks at.
Yeah, but I mean, the original planning application that sort of stated the hours for Friday and Saturday and Sunday, which they were passed as part of the original application. And that's why obviously what they're saying, if they want to change that condition to vary it so they can open Monday to Thursday. But I think it is, we're saying that it seems to be extending the use of that. And should we, in terms of actually what we're saying, I would see it as that we are recommending refusal to this, but it should be referred to the licensing committee. Because strictly speaking, the planning application, we're saying no, we're saying refer it on. So on that basis, we are actually saying refusing.
I think the big change in that, the hours it was opening, the rest of the industrial site in the main was closed. So it was, you know, an extension of the usability of the industrial estate, you know. I think probably the conflict will come here, is other businesses trying to do their daily thing and deliveries and whatever, and whether this opening this facility for the hours it's asking for will have a detrimental effect on those bits. So I think that's something that needs to be taken into
Yeah, I mean,
consideration.
this is one of the objections,
Yeah.
is effectively it's on that basis that it will interfere with the other businesses. I mean, the thing is, if they are opening at sort of 5 o'clock, I would be surprised if the other businesses have stopped operating at 5 o'clock. So I've sort of put forward then that we recommend refusal as it stands, but with the caveat that it should be referred to the licensing committee.
I would go on that, yeah. Although I'm not quite sure whether I'm happy with us recommending refusal on it. I'll go with the majority.
Well, the reason I say that, Kevin, is because potentially what we're saying is that if we're saying recommending the licensing committee, what we're saying is that the planning application is effectively, we're saying it should be refused as it stands, but no, we're not saying that the licensing committee, they could actually grant that.
Yeah, I recommend it goes to licensing.
Yeah.
So it's a question, Chair. Is it the extension of the opening hours for this place? Isn't that a licensing committee decision anyway?
I would have thought so as well.
So shouldn't they have perhaps approached the licensing committee first?
I don't know, they may have done, but I mean, the thing is, the original one, as far as I can see, was potentially, they were talking about the hours of opening, went as a pub type thing, it was on the basis of tasting. That's what the application was for originally. Which, I mean, tasting from 5 till 11.
Depends on any.
That's a lot of tasting going.
I would suggest if you're actually bringing in food vans, it's a completely different.
Yeah.
If you don't bring food vans into tasting.
They do functions, that's the point. Yeah, it's.
Do we know what our licensing agreement is?
But, I mean, this is the thing, the other thing is that if it refuses as it stands, we can also say, A, it needs more investigation, B, it needs referring to the licensing.
The license committee have to go out and decide this.
Yeah,
And I think they have to consult with police as well, people like that.
The cameras and all sorts of issues.
I think it's obviously that it's being used for more than just tasting.
Do we have to give it accept or refusal, or can we just go back and say, can you provide
I mean,
B and C
one
information?
of the questions we can raise is the type of use that it's allocated for seems to be, from my point of view, the way I see it, not what they're using it for.
Well,
Potentially, if they're using it for entertainment,
it must have been in the original planning application. Or else, I would imagine people around there would have made complaints to the planning committee and saying, this is going on, there's stuff going on here that's outside the original planning. Now, I don't know what the original planning decision was on this, I can't really remember. But what I'm suggesting is what they're doing now is within the rules of the original application that the district council said yes to, and what they're asking now is just extend those hours a bit. And you know, I find it hard to see how it's a planning issue, although a lot of these do come to planning, the change of hours and stuff, whether it be chemists or pubs or restaurants or whatever. But with this one, it's just think licensing should be better.
Yes, the fact that, you know, when we were talking about it before, it was a microbrewery and they wanted the planning for the facilities where people want to do tasting. I can't imagine that there is degrees of on-sale licenses passed. It's either on sales on the premises, selling alcohol for consumption on the premises, or not. I don't think there's a sort of tea about you can have a sip and that's acceptable. So I think we probably have got the right approval for those hours. It's just whether, you know, we're a little bit vague on these kind of things, on whether it's a licensing thing to change that, or whether it's the fact that that was because it was a planning condition put in, because those are the hours which they wanted, which were outside the normal operating hours of that industrial, they having to come through planning as well. But certainly I would expect that changing the hours of on sales is a licensing function. And but having not been on licensing, I wouldn't be 100% sure about that, but that's my certainly considered.
So, I mean, in terms of this, we sort of try and bring it to a close. Are we going to go on the basis that we recommend refusal as a planning application, but say it should be referred to the licensing committee, and also it needs to be looked at as to what is actually going on there?
Are we able to put a deferred decision on the basis that we feel it needs to go to licensing for consideration, as opposed to making a recommendation of one way or the other? Because I think
Well,
we just
I mean,
haven't got, this committee's only advisory, and we haven't got the information.
We can actually sort of say, oh, we're not, on the basis that we would like more information, and also it needs referring to the, yeah, so on that basis, then what we're saying, if everybody's happy, is that we don't make a decision, but it needs referring to the licensing committee, and we would also like more information as to what the use that's actually being made of the place.
I just find it hard to believe they're operating now outside of their original license. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they may be, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, according to their application, they were saying that effectively they started this on the 4th of February 2022. So it might be it's been going on, and somebody sort of someone said you need planning permission for this, which is what can happen.
Realistically, listening to conversations, far too many inputs and maybes in this. No one really knows.
This is why I said we don't make a decision then, we just basically say
I mean,
refer it to licensing, and we would like more information.
Yeah.
they're being open. I mean, on social media, they're advertising cricket sports on the television and football and stuff like that. You know, operating as a conventional pub, except they're brewing their own stuff on the premises.
Yeah, but what we're doing is say, right?
Well, I just find, I mean, it may not be, but I find it hard to believe
That's
that
it.
they're selling alcohol to the general public and not got the correct stuff. I mean, I could be wrong, obviously, but I just find it hard to believe if they were doing that. Surely they would try to keep it sort of undercover rather than advertising. Like if you go and get a drink in there as well. Yeah.
But going to bring it to a close then, what we would sort of say that potentially we won't make a decision on it, but it should be referred to the licensing, and we would like more information as to what's actually going on there.
Yes. It's licensed only. Licensing district.
Yes, yes.
Every factory in the world got a pub next to it, too. Why we've become so prissy that. Really all getting there.
Okay then, let's move on to the next one. SMD 230377, Mr. and Mrs. Daniel, Hillview Farm, Canada Road, Backlog. It's a replacement farm. No pre-occupation price, but all the big brick and wood tiles. The farm's down a driveway up Town Hill Road. And it's currently a 3-bedroom single-story dwelling. It looks like a reorganisation of the ground floor with an extension, which has been a formal lounge, an additional first floor with the additional bedrooms and office space. From the way I was sort of slightly wondered when I was looking at this, whether the intention was to knock the original building down and start again. But then when I sort of looked at the plans, it says it's an extension and alterations to the existing dwelling. So I presume, as you say, it's extending the single-story building and also putting a first floor on it. I've got concerns really the size of the extension, because obviously virtually it seems to more than double the size of the original dwelling. And if it is in the green belt, which I think it is, it doesn't match the existing footprint. Because obviously the extension on the ground floor is new. So my sort of initial feeling is that we recommend refusal on grounds of overdevelopment, potential prevention of the green belt.
Can I ask a technical question? I'm not a builder, but can you actually put first floor onto basically a bungalow? Is the structure strong enough to do, you can do that?
Well, obviously, you do it, you obviously got to put new beams and things into the holding. That sounds weird.
Yes, just to answer that, it depends upon the foundations which were laid in the first place. Certainly when bungalows first started being built, the specifications for the foundations were less substantial than the specifications for a normal two-storey house. So usually as part of the site survey and building control is an assessment of the foundations. In some instances, if the foundations are laid obviously on solid rock, then you can build as high as you want. So it depends on the ground construction services as well. But generally speaking, a lot of the bungalows built around here in the 70s, you couldn't just put a second floor.
See, I come from an area where they used to put bungalows on a concrete floor.
On the raft, yeah.
So,
I doubt we'd make an application if they hadn't already investigated this. You'd be throwing money away. The first thing you do is get an engineer.
Potentially, if what they do is making the first floor in the roof. It is doors and windows. Yeah.
So we're not having brick on brick.
Yeah. That wouldn't need to be anyway.
Okay.
But as I say, in terms of floor space, it's obviously a lot. And that's why I sort of say it seems to be over 50%. That's why I would recommend refusal on grounds of overdevelopment and potential contravention of green belt because of the extension that they're building is new to the existing building. And so it's basically not the same footprint. And are you prepared to go with that recommendation then? Yes. Okay. Thank you. So that's your two new applications. We've also got a shotgun entry. It's SMD 2023-0463. It's the Mr. and Mrs. Seapat from Bailey's Farm over the hill, Neighbourhood Moor. It's proposed detached garage, the wall the block, overclad in timber boarding, the roof will match the existing house. The garage replaces the existing chicken roost. It doesn't give us a size, but it appears to be a double garage, but with a single door. It seems reasonably straightforward. It's the back of the plot. It's away from anything else. So I would recommend approval on that one.
is it the same size as the structure that's already there? Is it the same size as the structure?
No, it's bigger than the,
A lot bigger,
bigger than the chicken roost.
but it's behind.
It's behind it.
And then wait for the final application. To dwelling.
I couldn't particularly see any problems with it. Are we happy with that? Approval. Item 38, I'm sorry, 39. New decision. Oh, yes. Yeah, I forgot about that. It's in August. I sent recommendations for planning applications out. I had one response. I had one response, which I took into consideration. And basically, the back of the agenda, you just need to authorize those recommendations that were sent. Staffordshire Moorlands to those planning applications. Go to 30. after item 39. So we'll be planning back in the meeting. Those are the ones that were sent in. As I say, I sent them out, I got no response for one, so I was on the basis that if there's no response, then that was the agreement. What actually stated. The one that I've changed. ET. Well, that was it, with the higher Whitemore farm, so the plan application was submitted, I think. I did originally said it would recommend approval, firstly, from, basically sort of said, I think there ought to be a planning application. I think that's the one for office. The other one was a DET, was the one for the change of use from office to a residential flat, which is the one in front of me, sort of said, yeah, that should go ahead. Shouldn't be a problem with that one. So basically, yeah, go on you, if that probably move bit that we accept those. Where's that? That's it. All in favour? Me? Yes. 39 then, the new decisions and notices received from the district council. Don't think there's anything there that we disagreed with. So basically that's later there for I don't know if there's anything that's any disagreement. Give that a sound. Yeah. We've got no appeals.
Sorry, just declaring interest in that first one. I know we're not discussing it, but it's just as it's my property.
Was that the one on the new decision? I think you have already declared an interest on the actual.
I don't know.
Yes.
Cross the T's, dot the I's, and all that.
Okay, so there's no appeals. At 6 o'clock.
We can go around.
At 12:30.